Good morning, everybody. This is Lori Smith, and this is Coffee, Trauma, Surviving Abuse, and we're looking at today loving and accepting ourselves. So we left off last time just talking about learning to accept ourselves as we are, and that means all of us, all of our parts, our wounded parts, the ugly parts that we don't want to see about ourselves, the things that we've been through, all that horrible stuff. That's what I, was, of course, is so hard to deal with, right? On the surface, I think, a lot of people can, do the daily thing and get, some can't, sometimes we can't, but some people can't. They're just too, just suffering too badly, traumatized to the point where, they really can't do the daily life thing. For a lot of us, we can, and we go through life putting on that smile, and all the while we've got this gaping, wounded inner child or inner person that we really are on the inside, who is, unconsolable. Like, it's living that double kind of life where, okay, go to work or whatever, do life, but in the meantime, there's this part of ourselves that is so unhealed and so unwell. And I think, that causes, it's kind of like living a double life. I think it causes us to be kind of not able to really live life to the fullest. And for me, I knew I had problems, people who sit around on the couch, and I just talk about that as a euphemism, but people that contemplate suicide on a regular basis and are just crushed inside so badly, that even the people around them don't really realize that they're going through this. They just live this sort of hellish life. You could have been come through any kind of trauma. It doesn't have to be child abuse, right? That causes us that we can't do life anymore, that we don't want to do life anymore, that we're so wounded, right? That's a problem, right? That's a real problem, because most people don't do that, right? And, when I finally just started to get help, and reach out and get help, which was, really, I started my healing journey in 2009. I actually did begin to start it in 2007, but it took me 2 years to actually start working on getting better and start looking at the issues and what was causing me to feel this way. And I knew what was causing me to feel this way. Like I said, I never really was in denial about the abuse, but I needed to learn how to get in touch with that woundedness and allow myself to heal, right? Instead of just continuing on in the same cycle. These horrible patterns that we can get into, right, as adults, because we've got unhealed trauma from the past, whatever that is for you. So that's kind of what we're going to be looking at today, and I hope you're having a good morning so far. I'm just having coffee, just waking up. I actually haven't been up all that long. Just getting ready for the day. It's Monday morning, July 3rd, and I had a good weekend. I hope that you did too. I know it's July 4th coming up for the people in the States, so happy July 4th coming up tomorrow. And we had our July 1st Canada Day celebration, and I didn't do anything. I basically just hung out and took it easy. There was a question whether we were going to have fireworks or not, because Canada is like on fire. If you haven't seen the news, lots of forest fires going on. And but they ended up shooting off some fireworks here in Calgary, and parts of Canada did not, because of the fire issue, which I think is kind of smart. And so Canada's burning down, so it's like but they went ahead and did some fireworks here anyway. But yeah, it's July already, and the summer's just rolling along. So I'm gonna, this I don't know. I'm off right now with a broken shoulder. So I'm just taking it easy, and that's probably why I'm revisiting some of this stuff, because it traumatized me, falling on the ground like that. breaking my bones and hurting my whole body. Brought back some feelings from the abuse, just identifying, with being so injured, and also being fired, which caused me to then start to think, yeah, okay, I don't measure up. I just really don't count, even though I'm almost 60 and I'm broken down and I've been through a lot. I guess I really don't count. So I'm having to go back and relook at some stuff and get back in touch with my wounded self and say, you know what, it's okay. It's okay. People don't understand where you've been. People don't understand. They don't. Why would they care? Like, I have to care about me. It doesn't mean other people will. And so, I got to take care of myself and do the right things by myself, right? And this is what we're talking about today. Loving and accepting ourselves, right? Because, and I'm talking really, survivors of abuse, anybody can probably gain from this information, of course. But for survivors of abuse, it's a serious issue. It's learning how to love ourselves, learning how to truly love ourselves, our wounded selves. For me, it was an issue. And I do have some pictures there, and I also want to read one of my poems because it kind of ties this whole thing in. I've actually, what do I got there? I've got, the first photo is me at 5 years old, first grade. And, the social workers were around just prior to that. And when I was 4. And they told my mom to get me into school early because I needed to be interacting with regular, normal life stuff. So I started school, right? I didn't go to kindergarten. I just went right into first grade. And it was traumatizing, very traumatizing. I was already really, really screwed from the abuse, but when I took that photo, the guy said something really nice to me, the photographer. I remember actually taking that photo. I remember taking all of my school photos. And it made me smile, And let's just say, you see these pictures of kids that are abused. Just take a look around. You can see them if you look at some of the child abuse articles and look at the photos presented for those articles. You see those little kids, they're smiling. Usually have a cute little look on their face, the cute little smiles. But they're dead, most likely. In the morgue, right? Somebody killed them. Somebody just abused them too badly and they died from the injuries or whatever. And so little kids do smile, and especially when somebody says something nice to them, usually. So that's that first picture. And then I did include some other school photos. So as I'm talking here, you'll see those. They're all in chronological order. I didn't include them all, but just a few, just to give you an idea. I just look like a regular kid. I wasn't really all that well dressed sometimes, but my mom borrowed the little red dress in the picture that's coming up with a red dress. That's my second grade picture, and that one is a dress that my mom borrowed from the neighbor. And so it wasn't mine. I was really happy to be able to wear it. It was beautiful. This little red dress, white sleeves. It was so cute. I didn't have anything like that, that's for sure. And then the next photo you'll see is my 8-year-old photo, and that is at the point where the CSA child sexual abuse was going on. And you can just see by the look on my face that I am traumatized, not getting any sleep. And we really never got any sleep at all in my home. It was just sporadic because of the fights between my parents at night. And then with the CSA child sexual abuse happening, with my brother coming in and raping me, when he was 21, I was 8. It caused me a lot of course, damage, and also I became very sick from an infection from being raped, right? And so I was just getting sicker and sicker. And then after almost a year later, my mom shipped him off to Canada, and I never saw him again. And that was, I did see him one time for a brief visit because he came to stay with us after he was committing suicide. That's all in my books if you really want to check all that out. But then after that, I didn't see him ever again, and I was glad. And then he committed suicide. Then the next photo you'll see is just some later years. 12 years old, and then 11 years old, 12 years old, and my high school picture is, I want to say 14. And then there's some other photos of me taken at a photo stand. So you'll see those coming up as we're talking here. But I did write a poem for my inner wounded child, and I'll read that here in just a little bit. But the issue is like I did a lot of healing, looking into the inner child stuff. When I first, like I've talked about it quite a bit. If you ever want to look at inner child work that I've talked about in the past, which is, I mean, months worth of material. It's unbelievable how much stuff I've actually done on this, how much work I've actually done on this. I'm not a psychotherapist. I was using materials to that were really helpful for me, and then I was sharing publicly, on my broadcasts about this information and how it was helping me to get in touch with my wounded self from so long ago, right? Because I knew, that I had this inner rage going on, and this inner rage that I didn't want to hurt other people. I didn't want to hurt somebody else. So I was hurting myself. It was this implosion, because I certainly didn't want to be a horrible person, you know what I mean, and hurt people. And this inner rage was just ripping me apart. And that's what I'm saying, sitting on the couch at the end of the day with this, stuck with myself, right? Sitting there thinking, how long can I do this? How long can I continue to live like this? And I mean, at the age of 41 and a half, I was just about ready to give up, right? Last straw. I hit rock bottom. I could not go any further the way that it was going. And I thought, I have to. I mean, I wasn't using drugs at that time or drinking or anything. I was just having a breakdown, breakdown crisis. But what they actually really call it is called a breakthrough crisis, because I got to the point where I realized I couldn't go any further doing that, repeating that cycle over and over again without getting help. So it was a breakthrough crisis, and I decided to get help instead of kill myself. Here I sit today, however many years later, almost 14 years later, and I'm really glad to be here. And that's why I do this. I could be doing anything else, but I really want to help pass stuff on to other people that I think is valuable, and because I know that I'm not the only one, right, that suffers from these horrible situations where, we've been so wounded. How do we go on, right? There's millions and trillions of us out here, right? And I thought, I gotta share this with people, because it really helped me out. Hopefully it'll help you out, at least just to look around for what will work for you, because what worked for me doesn't maybe work for other people, right? And all of our stories are different. All of our situations are different, and we are different people, right? So you have to find what works for you. But I wanted to sort of just look at embracing ourselves. That's what we left off talking about in the last vlog that I did, the last podcast, and that was just embracing ourselves regardless of our imperfections, right? I mean, we need to learn how to love our whole self, right? And that we are worthy of love, right? We are worthy of love from others, and we're worthy of love from ourselves, right? And we do need to learn how to embrace that marred image, that image that is, damaged, scarred. It's not going to ever be fixed, right? That inner image on the inside of us that remembers the trauma, that remembers what, the horror that were forced to endure, whatever that was, or that just came upon us. Could have been illness, could have been, a death of a loved one. It could have been, some horrible thing happened, some traumatic event that happened in your life that caused you to become your own enemy, right? And we need to learn how to love ourselves, truly. It's not this whole thing of being conceited, I'm so great, look at me. It's not that. It's learning how to accept ourselves and genuinely be our own best advocate. get the help that we need, take care of ourselves. Really, we can't take care of other people if we can't take care of ourselves. We can't help our loved ones around us if we can't take care of ourselves, you know? Um, Many times that's what happens is people do end up helping other people around them and they don't take care of themselves, right? And that's not good. That's just not good at all because we're stuck with ourselves at the end of the day, like I said. And at what point is it not going to be okay anymore, right? That we've done that. Um, you know, it's really, you can't go back and get that time back, you know? I mean, it's pretty shocking when you look back and you see that stuff and you're like, wow, oh my God. How do you even play catch up with that? How do you even, you know, deal with that? Like, it's insane. Like when I realized at the age of 29 and I moved up to Canada to get away from my absolutely insane mother and dad, but my mother her behavior was just so horrible. I was like, I'm going 2,000 miles away from you. And that's what I did. I moved 2,000 miles north away from my mother. And I had just spent like the last so many adult years trying to help her out, you know. Here I was, just this wounded little girl, abused by her horrifically. Still as an adult, trying to get that acceptance from her, I wasn't really trying to buy brownie points. I was honestly trying to gain her love, right? And I was never going to get it. Never. She made sure of it. It was like even right up until the end. I mean, she had, what's that word, bamboozled? She had completely tricked me, right? My mother was a manipulative, horrible, horrible woman. Absolutely horrible. Oh my God. At the age of 29, I was like, that is it, man. I have had enough. I was irate, to say the least, at the stuff that she was saying to me. And the stuff that all of a sudden, this little wounded girl that I was, started shouting out and going, we can't take any more of this. We just can't take any more of this, right? I mean, she couldn't beat me up anymore, right? But she could mess with my mind, man. She could mess with my heart. She could mess with my head, which she had been doing. But the thing is she was leading me out with these little carrots. Oh, if you stay and help me, as if, I was ever going to gain her love, right? As her daughter. She was never going to do that for me. Never. So at the age of 30, I was like, you know what? I'm gone. Bye. I got to go get my own life now. Bye-bye. So I did. I left and I moved to Canada. And the trip that I went on was unbelievable. Because I realized that I had lost so much time, that I should have been getting my own life together, and that I should have been doing my own adult life on my own, away from my abusers. Wasted time that I would never get back. And that added fuel to that inner rage that was already going on. And then because I had been betrayed so incredibly bad by the person that should have loved me and cared for me, my mother, right? And my dad. I mean, it's horrific, right? How do you ever heal from that? How do you ever be able to move past that? A lot of people don't. They delve into alcohol and drugs, like I said, and they just medicate because it's just too hard, right? Or they kill themselves, one or the other. And so, it's been a hard, long haul. And when I hit rock bottom there, 41 and a half, just having this breakdown, or breakthrough, whatever you want to call it, I decided to get help. And I thought, man, I'm going to have to start at the beginning. I'm going to have to start where it all started, which was my birth, when I came into the world, being brought in by C-section. And I'm going to have to take a look at what damage was done and why it was so hard on me. And then I need to learn how to love myself. and how to love that little wounded inner child or children that I was. I actually didn't really think of myself as a survivor of abuse, and I didn't think of myself as, I mean, we had social workers around. My parents were brought up on child abuse charges, but we never held that up. We never held that up to them, my parents, and used that as a weapon or a tool to hurt them. You know, we never, like, none of the siblings or me abused my parents. Like, we tried to do the best we could for our parents, and our parents just abused us. They didn't care, like, you know, and even as adults, they didn't care, right? They were just so, they did not deserve us, okay? I'll speak for all of my siblings. They didn't deserve us. They didn't deserve to have our love. They didn't deserve to have children, really. Um, you know, I think about our family, what it would have been like if we would have had different parents. Decent parents. It would have been great. Can't even imagine. Um, so, you know, I mean, no, they didn't deserve my love, right? But I had to go and actually get in touch with this part of myself that I knew was wounded, because I knew what I had come through, I knew what I'd been through. And I thought, okay, I really got to do this work. And I started looking at this inner child work, and this inner child work, I didn't really like the idea of it, because I thought, wow, is that like demonic or what, right? Because it is getting into the darkness. It's going back into the subconscious, where these little sub-personalities are created at the point of trauma. And it's like wherever the trauma happened, that's where this little sub-personality will develop. Um, and some people have more than one. Some people, you know, maybe just have one. I can't imagine that people don't have any, because we've all been wounded at some point. But I had to go back and start looking into this stuff and what happened, and that's where my books came in, because I started actually out of a self-protection measure, started writing a blog, A Life of Death Redemption, but I called it Growing Up in an Abusive, Not So Fond Memories, Growing Up in an Abusive Household. I started this blog because my abuser dad was staying with me. I mean, he was old, he was in his 80s, but it was self-protection, because I thought, man, he could kill me. He had threatened my life before, and I thought, you know, I mean, he literally threatened me and my sister's life, trying to drive us over a cliff. But, I mean, I used to sleep with a knife at night when I was a child, after about 9 years old. I started sleeping with a knife under my bed, because I thought, you know, it's going to be him or me, and it's not going to be me. That was my mentality, man. I was like, you know, he's going to fucking kill me one day. You know, and that was my fear, because my dad absolutely and me did not get along. Even from childhood, because I used to stand up for my mother, and, you know, he didn't like that, right? Of course not. And also I hit him in the head with my pink plastic bat. But anyway, that's in my books, and I do talk quite a bit about it. But I mean, I smacked him hard, man. Because I thought he was going to kill my mom, right? So I paid dearly for that, let me tell you. But the thing is I don't care. I stood right up to him, and I did all the way through till 17 years old. I'd stand up to him. He didn't like that, right? And I would pay for it physically, right? But the thing is I'm like, you know what? You're not getting away with this shit. So, you know, me and my dad did not get along, right? It's like, then later in years, you know, when my parents were done beating on us and it was all just emotional, psychological abuse, he listened to me, because I was tall and I was big, and I'm like, you go to your room, I used to tell him. I'd be like, you go to your room and you sit down, and I was like the parent. I'm like, you sit down and you behave yourself. And he would listen to me, because I was too big and too old, and I wasn't messing around anymore. But anyway, the issue is, because he knew I'd kill him. That's why. So the thing is like, this stuff is absolutely horrible. Absolutely horrible. No child should ever have to go through this. And, you know, I started to realize, like, wow, I am really fucked up. And I started to look at rage, all the stuff that I was feeling, because I was going through these, so I was using a survivor manual, as well as attending ASCA, Adult Survivors of Child Abuse meetings and stuff like that. And so, you know, I started to do the work, right? And as I started to do the work, I started to realize, like, oh, so this is what this is. Okay, I didn't know, you know, like I said, I didn't run around considering myself to be an abuse survivor. It was just life for me. I was just like, oh, it's just life. It's just been shits, right? Um, you know, yeah, I didn't sit there thinking I'm an adult survivor of child abuse, right? Until I found it out that I was, right? And I'm like, wow, no shit. My parents were busted on child abuse charges, those sons of bitches. And the system just left us in the home because they didn't consider it to be life threatening, even though there was physical abuse and all this stuff going on. They didn't care. They're like, oh well, that we don't see there's any real threat. Are you kidding me? My dad was like schizophrenic and suicidal and highly abusive, and my mother was a narcissistic, sadistic narcissist, abuser woman, right? Like you don't want to be around people like that. Let me tell you, especially when they're angry. It's like, my parents were horrible. So anyway, whatever we got left in the home. I don't, people, I've had people say, are you going to pursue it? It's like, why bother? The trauma and the trouble that it would take me. You know what I mean? No, no. You know, I thought, no, I'm gonna do the more positive thing, which is to be a voice. My stuff is out there. It's on websites that hopefully will never disappear. If people want to get a hold of it, my books are free if you want to read them. They're also out there as documents. I really wanted to make change. I wanted to write other books, but I kind of am so tired and, I'm kind of struggling all the time, so I really can't get myself together. But I had 5 books on the go, writing 5 books. So yeah, I'm kind of, I'm sort of stuck in between right now. But I did want to finish those books. But anyway, I just wanted to make a difference in this mess, right? So long story short, whatever you've gone through, whatever you've suffered, these horrible things, right? And if you haven't got any help and it's stewed and it's blown up to this situation of rage, maybe self-injury, using drugs, not doing well, you have to go and get help, right? Because it's not our fault that all this stuff happened to us, but as adults, we have to take charge of our life and say, you know what, yeah, okay, I need help, man, and I'm glad I reached out and got help, because I was like, man, I need help. I'm not going down the way my brothers went down, man, because I got to the point where I was like, the last straw, I was like, I don't know if I can come back from this episode that I had on the couch, I wasn't sure if I could come back from it, because I was like, it's so easy for me to end it right here. And I can't do this again. I can't do this anymore, right? This suicidal, manic episode, right? Which I was only going to hurt myself, right? And nobody would have known about it. And my husband would have been really upset, because he would have been like, I tried to help her, and I loved her, and it would have broke his heart. So I put the screwdriver down. I thought, no, I'm gonna live. I'm gonna do this, because this little voice was telling me to live. I did talk about that. I've done a lot of talking about it, actually. It's in my book, Life of Death: The Redemption, if you want to read it. And from that point on, I thought, I gotta get help. But I didn't do any work for 2 years on this stuff. And then when I started, like I said, it was a big long haul. I started looking at grief work, inner child work, and the inner child work was very helpful for me. Once I realized that, yes, I did have these wounded parts of myself, that I could still see these wounded little girls that I was being abused, that I needed to get in touch with, because they needed love, they needed care, they needed concern, and they were just left, left to suffer by themselves. These little sub-personalities that were me at those ages being abused, right? And so this one program that I was really, I want to call it lucky or blessed to have the opportunity to be a part of, was called Your Envisioned Mind, My Envisioned Mind. That's what they call it now, I think, My Envisioned Mind. It's out of Australia. I talked about it the other day. Beverly Searle and Kate Mitchell actually originally created that program. Both of them are survivors of trauma and abuse, and child abuse, horrific child abuse. And they wanted to, they went to college, they went to university, they got PhDs, and they met up as adults to create this program for survivors of trauma. It doesn't have to be survivors of abuse, but it helps anybody who's survived got any kind of trauma or any kind of issue that's really caused you to develop these little personalities, these little sub parts of ourselves, because we all have them. I guess even if we're not traumatized, they are there. Um, so I got to do this program, and it really helped me out. I got to get in touch with all these wounded parts of myself from these different ages, and um, get them some help is what it was really all about. You know, looking into my mind's eye, I could see myself, at a very young age. Um, that little one. I mean, I have memories really going back to 4 years old, but I have some really fleeting sort of foggy memories before that, and always this feeling of fear, really mostly fear, and sort of anxiety, because I was growing, while I was growing up. I mean, there was horrific abuse going on. That's why my parents were brought up on child abuse charges, right? I mean, my dad had been abusing my mother since before they were married, and then they had 9 babies that actually sort of came through. There may have been others that just were miscarriages way before. I mean, it can happen. But the thing is that my mother was kind of pregnant like all the time. You know what I mean? My dad would not allow her to be on any kind of birth control. And she was told after my brother Howard, like after she gave birth to Howard, she was told not to ever have any more children. But my dad just made sure that she was pregnant like all the time. The doctors were telling her, like they were telling him, you got to stop because she's going to die. And my dad didn't care. He just didn't care. My dad did not care about my mother at all, or any of us. He just wanted to pop out a bunch of kids, kick us around, beat up on my mother, and have his little fun, whatever, right? And he was a sick man, right? Very, very sick. He was a very unwell man and never should have really been allowed to do that. But he got away with it. So the thing is, I grew up in abuse. There was abuse going on before I was before I was C-sectioned out there. I'm sure that my parents were fighting while I was in the womb because my mother ended up very sick and in a coma. Also because I have RH factor, right? My mom's RH, I'm RH, so my blood was poisoning her blood was poisoning me, but I know for sure they were fighting with me in the womb there because shortly after I was brought home, I made it. Barely, but I made it because I was born like I was popped out of the womb like 2.5 months early. So I was a preemie baby, and I was in an incubator for a long time with my own nurse and everything like that. And at some point between that and 4, my parents were brought up and busted on child abuse charges. And my dad had beaten up my brother, and Rob, and he was 13 years older than me. So it must have been just shortly after I was born. And my mom sent him to school in a turtleneck in the summertime, and he had bruises all over his face, I guess. And the teacher noticed and was asking him questions. He said he was afraid to go home, and so they got the police involved. And my parents were both busted on child abuse charges. So we had social workers around until I was about 4. Because the last time I remember sort of seeing the two of them, they used to come together. This guy and this man and this woman would come with paperclip and paper, and they like their forms, and they'd fill out all this stuff. They'd check me for bruises and CSA, child sexual abuse, and all kinds of stuff, right? And they'd talk to my mom and give her ideas on how to bond with me and how to sort of what to do to try to help to make up for the trauma that I had been through, right? My parents were abusing the kids, I mean, since I was born, right? So they were, my siblings were abused, and they were 18 years older than me. My dad was abusing, my oldest sister uh, was 18 years older than me, and my dad had abused her horrifically. See, my parents were professional child abuse people. Like, they were professional abusers. They had 18 years from the time my sister was born to when I was born, 18 years of kids to abuse in between there. And they were like, yeah, we're getting better at it all the time. By the time I came around, they were really good at it. They were like, they were professional child abusers, man. They were like, yeah, we know how to hurt, you know. And they were horrible. They were absolutely freaking horrible. And all the neighbors just loved them, you know, except for a couple. There were a couple of neighbors that used to actually check on us to make sure we were okay, because they could see right through it, and they knew that my parents were busted on child abuse charges, and they were like, you know, this one neighbor was actually kind of looking out for us, you know, which was very nice of her. You know, that didn't stop the abuse, but it was just nice to know that somebody was actually kind of keeping an eye. You know, most of the neighbors just loved my mom because she'd cry the blues. Oh, my husband. My horrible, horrible husband. And all these goddamn kids, you know, they don't help me. You know, this is my mother. I did a 27-hour video series if you want to watch that. But anyway, they conned the neighbors, they conned the school system. You know, it's all her dad, and you know, and then my mom would show up at the school meetings with the teachers, right? And you know, the teachers would talk with my mom, and everything was okay. You know, even though my mom was beating the shit out of me, burning me with her cigarettes, you know, ripping my hair out, causing, like, seriously, blood loss like you wouldn't believe. And, you know, it was absolutely horrible, right? And my dad was responsible for a lot of the abuse as well, but my mom especially. And so I had to get in touch with these little parts of myself, right? I'm like, whoa. I knew what I'd come through, and I'm like, I seriously need to get these little children some help that are within me, you know what I mean? Because nobody else did. So I had to go through and learn how to get in touch with myself from so long ago, and console myself, and actually let them, these little children that I used to be, let them know that I'm well aware that they're there, and that I am okay now as an adult, and that I have taken charge of my life, and nobody's abusing me, and that the abusers are dead, you know. So, you know, these little wounded parts of myself needed to know that they could trust me to make the right decision on their behalf, because nobody else was. Nobody else did. And they needed to know that I was fully capable of taking care of them, because nobody else did. So I had to integrate my whole self, right? It is a bit of a process, and it was a wonderful program, like I said. And I went through and did all this work, you know, it took a couple of years, but I'm in a lot better place than I ever was. And I did, one thing that I did, you'll see there's a picture there of some drawings that I did, this survivor art, kind of like subconsciously, like it was like a meditation drawing, and we were supposed to draw a flower, and I actually drew a dancing girl in a pink tutu, and just with a colored pencil. And I was drawing a flower, I thought, with this meditation thing that Ray Laskin, this survivor artist lady, was doing this meditation with me on my Blog Talk Radio program, and I drew a dancing girl in a tutu, pink tutu, and I thought, that's wild, because we were supposed to open our eyes and come back, you know, and look at what we had drawn. And while she was going through all this stuff, real meditation thing, it was really cool. And I drew this little girl, and I thought, that's me. That's that little person inside of me that's in there, that I thought, oh, That's the 8-year-old. That's my 8-year-old. The one who was sexually abused. And she's got a pink tutu on and she's dancing. Wow. And so then I realized that because I was, I was tied up and I was bound and gagged and raped by my brother, who was 21 years old. A 21-year-old 6'2" man. You know, probably like, well, he was skinny, but he was tall and he was big. And I was 8 years old. I was just a tiny little thing. And, you know, the trauma and the sheer trauma from that, just, I couldn't deal with it, you know. I have memories, real strong, like sharp memories of some of it, and some of it I don't. But that's me. I have those memories. But the little 8-year-old me that's wounded doesn't. She's dancing around in a pink tutu. I never had a pink tutu, but I probably wanted one. That's her. That's that little girl. And so my 10-year-old, who is in the drawing that I did of the after a beating, waiting for round 2, that's actually a chapter in my book, A Life of Death or Redemption. It's called in this corner, heavyweight champion, something like that. Because that was a horrible, horrible beating that I took from my mother, and that kind of was the point where I realized that I was dead. Because I could have died, actually. So the blood loss was insane. And I had 2 people actually try to help stop the blood flow, but it was just absolutely unbelievable. My mother was just such a vicious, horrible woman. And all I did was slam my bedroom door. It's not like I really did anything that wrong. I slammed my bedroom door. Right. And it got this ass kicking like you wouldn't believe. So I drew a picture of it so I could allow my inner self to actually understand that I remember, right? And that was my 10-year-old, and that's where the rage came from. And the rage was that, you know what, you've killed my soul, you've killed my spirit, so you may as well go ahead and kill my body, because I'm dead. You know, this is a year and a half later after the CSA child sexual abuse happened, right? And then I'm, still being so horrifically wounded by my parents in every way. And I'm like, I can't live any more of this. How the hell am I supposed to live any more of this? You know? Sitting around in bathtubs of bloody water, like, for years. I'm like, how long do I have to keep going through this? And that little 10-year-old is the one that she's the one that rages within me. Right? That's my rage. And that's her. She's real. That was me at that age. And she stayed there for a long, long time, raging and crying and angry, and doesn't trust anybody. Not anybody. And anybody that gets close, they're gone. It doesn't matter how long it takes, but they're gone. Because that's that little part of myself that cannot allow anybody to get that close, right? I mean, Cecil managed to make it. My husband, that passed away, because I trusted him. I really did, because he showed himself to be trustworthy, and he held me through the pain. He held me through the, I'd have these horrible nightmares, and I'd wake up screaming and crying, and he would just hold me, right? He didn't leave me. He didn't say, oh, you're just too much. You're just too fucked up. I can't be with you, man. No, he held me, and he rocked me, and he held me, and he so tight, like to say, you know what, it's okay, I'm here, He was such a good man. And so, it's these little wounded parts of ourselves. Like, I seriously knew they were there, and I needed to get in touch with them, right? So I did that program, and it really helped me out. I don't know if it would ever help you out, but it was a wonderful program. So I'll put the link in the chat, and I'll put the link in the show information. Um, and I got in touch with all those little parts of myself, and I wrote the book One Child Abuse Survivor to Another: The Journey, about the CSA child sexual abuse, which is not for children, explicit sexual material in there. And I even have a disclaimer on it. If you read it and you're not an adult, that's your fault. That's your problem. If you're, you know, if you're older and you read it, that's your choice. It's graphic, explicitly sexual material. So, but the issue is like, I needed to get in touch with that stuff. And that little, this program, I mean, I had a lot of sub-personalities there, and, there's you'd have to, if you want more information, you have to let me know. But I do have some shows where I've talked about it, where you create this place, this safe place, where nobody else is allowed, right? And these little sub-personalities then are free. Like, I could just call them my inner children, because that's who they are. My inner me's from all those woundings, right? I had to go and save myself, right? That's the comfort level. It's like, oh, finally somebody came to save me, right? It's like me. I had to do it. I saved myself. And in doing that, I got to be in touch with, I forget how many were there, but I mean, there was a lot there, a lot of these little me's. And recently I went in and did a little visit, like a visitation, whatever. It's a meditation is what it is. And there's only the one there, the 10-year-old, right? But she's not angry anymore. Because in this meditation, I would go in and she would have knives, like she would have big pictures of like canvas work of sketches of my mom and dad, and she'd have like knives in their heads and stuff, where she was practicing knife throwing. Because that little wounded part of myself is, that's the rage. That's the rage. That's the one that destroys, the destructive one, who could destroy, whole rooms, furniture, wreck cars. I mean, she's the one she's like the destroyer one, right? Because she's destroyed, right? And so she can't help herself. She was in this safe place. She was by herself in a special area, and not that I think she would hurt in the other sub personalities. It wasn't like that. She just needed her own space so she could do her healing work. So that's what I set up for her inside this safe space. And I'd go and visit, and there'd be like a big old knife sticking out of a picture of my dad's head. And I was like, yeah, I mean, this is how I felt, right? This inner rage because of what they did to me. Like both of my parents smashed my skull in. Both of them cracked my head. When I was 18 years old and I had that car accident, I had to go to, obviously I was in the hospital. I was really in bad shape. And I hurt my friends. I mean, that's in my books if you ever want to talk to check that out. But anyway, I had to go for full body scans. They were checking everything because this car accident was so bad. My friends were injured. I was injured. And they were like, you've got so many old, like, skull fractures. It's not, you were either extremely clumsy or you were abused as a child, horrifically. I'm like, yeah, I was 18, and they were like, well, you can press charges, you're 18. And I'm like, it doesn't really fucking matter, does it? It's already done, And then, if they wanted the information, they could have got it, right? I mean, we were in the system, like, child abuse victims, right? So the issue is like, I mean, both of my parents were so horrific to me. I'm not even going into what they did to my other siblings. They were horrific to them, too, right? But they were my dad caused my oldest brother Kevin really to lose his eyesight when he was about 4 years old. 5 years old? Yeah, somewhere in there. Because my dad beat my brother in the head with a heavy encyclopedia, hardback encyclopedia book. Those things are heavy and they weigh a ton. And he beat my brother's head with it because he wouldn't eat his peas or something like that. And my brother almost lost his eyesight. His eyesight was never the same. Like, he crushed his head. That's my parents, right? It's like, they weren't fooling around. You know, it's horrific, right? My dad did horrible stuff to my sister Irene. Oh, nobody cares, The family, like, whatever, doesn't really matter. Even my sister Kathy's just like, well, whatever. It's like, okay, no, it's not whatever, And my sister Irene, like, even at her funeral, she did not want my dad there. Well, she was passing away. She had cancer, and right around 2007, she passed away. She's 18 years older than me. She had cancer and she was dying, and she did not want my dad there just to visit her in her last days or at her funeral. She didn't want him there, right? Because he abused her. He may have sexually abused her. I don't know. My dad was a bit of a perv, right? But it's terrible. Like, I know my dad molested me. I have sort of mentioned that a little bit. But he didn't rape me. I thought it was my dad who raped me, okay? Because in my mind's eye, at that age, 8 years old, I loved my brother. I couldn't figure out why my brother would do that to me, right? Because I hated my dad. I loved my brother. So in my mind, I thought there's no way that had to be my dad, right? But I'm like, no, it wasn't my dad. It was my brother. And my brother had no problems admitting to it, right? It's at the age of 12. He literally told me that he enjoyed what he did to my body. And I had already pushed all that stuff down, so far down, so I wouldn't have to deal with it because I was being abused by my parents. I couldn't, just got to compartmentalize this stuff, It's like, okay, I can't deal with that because I'm trying to stay alive here in this stupid ass home. And, it's like, in the back of my mind, I wanted to believe it was my dad because I hated my dad, right? But it was my brother, right? This stuff is horrific. It's absolutely horrific. My brother may have sexually abused my sister. I really don't know. There was that was 18 years before I was even born, right? That would have been what? 10, 15 years before I was even born. Who really knows, right? There was so much abuse going on before I was even born, right? I don't even know what my sister Kathy went through. Because she doesn't talk about anything, but it must have been bad. Because she's really fucked up, And it's awful. It's really awful, right? This sort of stuff. So I had to go back and learn how to get in touch with myself and how to love myself. All of these wounded parts of myself, right? These little wounded me's. And I did. I did the work, and I went through, and I saved them. I got them out of the abuse. In my mind's eye, I went and picked myself up off the floor from where I was. And when I was, and I finally got in touch with the one who was abused sexually, child rape. And I wrote a poem for her. It's on my website. It's my Born in Hell website. You can just type in Born in Hell Lori Smith or author Lori Ann Smith.weebly.com. And this is called Child of Pain. It's under my poems. And this is, oh my child of pain, let me hold you if you trust me. I promise I won't leave you again. Left alone in the dark these many years, bound and gagged in so much pain. Those endless tears you cried all alone. The door was shut, you were left on your own. The torture and torment as he raped you, 37 years, while I did not want to think about you. I had to split, my child of pain, as I knew I could not live with that kind of pain. Your wounded body, raped and torn, your wounded soul, your life he stole. My wounded body did finally heal, and no children would I have from the ordeal. My wounded mind raped every day, as I knew the truth about my child of pain. Let me untie you, set you free. I will sit here on the bed and keep you company. One day we will truly heal, learn to love again. Let me help you, precious girl. We can hold each other, soothe away the pain. Together we will take back our body, and we will take back our virginity, and we will take back our power. He cannot hurt us anymore. We have purged and cleansed ourselves from his evil deeds. And we are free, my precious, to love ourselves. No longer do we live in shame. No longer will we have to endure this pain. It is over, my precious child. I promise I will never leave you again. I wrote that in 2011. You know, that says it all right there. I had to go to the room, to the bedroom, to the bed that happened. Mainly it was in my bedroom. And I had to go there and I had to literally save myself from that bed. Right? And let that little one that I was know that, you know, how sorry I was that I left her by herself, right? 37 years. Because at the time I wrote this, that was how long it had been. You know, I didn't want to, I had to split. I didn't want to think about her, right? I didn't want to think about her. That little 8-year-old that I was. You know, and at the age of 22, 23, I had met this guy and I went to a gynecologist because he was older than me and he had had many sexual relations, and he said, you know, we're going to be, you know, I'm sure we love each other, you know, we want to do this. I'm going to get tested to make sure that I don't have anything and you get tested, and that way it'll be fair for both of us. And I was like, you know what, that's a good idea, because we were in love big time. And I went to a gynecologist and they were like, you know, I put down that I was a virgin on my intake form, right? I had never had sexual intercourse with anybody, right? Because in my mind, I really hadn't. Like, in my mind, I was still a virgin, right? Because I didn't concede, I didn't say, you know, I didn't hook up with anybody and have sex with them, right? And they did the tests and everything, and the lady was like, you know, she kept walking away. The gynecologist, she was like, you know, she was all pissed off. She kept walking away, and I thought, what the hell? I'm in a horrible situation here. I don't even want to be here doing this shit, you know, in that position. I'm like, you know, very triggering for me. I'm like, this sucks. And here she is being a bitch, walking off, you know, and all this stuff. And she finally came back, test was done. And she was in there talking to her colleague is what she was doing. She said, you know, I got news for you, honey. You're no virgin, right? And I'm like, the shock, I couldn't believe in my mind, because I did not want to face that, right? At all. I had put that stuff way, way down, you know, in a drawer, close the drawer, turn the key, put the key away. I don't want to deal with that, right? She's like, you know, we see the scars. I mean, it's a mess. You will not be able to have children. Like, there's no way. It's like, you can get on the pill if you want to, but chances of you getting pregnant are very, very slim. Even if you do, you probably won't be able to carry that baby. There's no way. Not without reconstructive surgery. Okay, and then I'm just sitting there and I'm trying to keep it all together, because I'm like, you know, I don't cry. I'm not allowed to cry, right? So, from childhood, no, I'm not allowed to cry. I just have to sit there and take it. So I just said, well, you know, okay. And then she says, you know, you can say you're a virgin like all you want, but we have to write it down how we see it. We're going to record it as we see it. And we know you were raped as a child or sexually abused as a child, somehow, and you've got a lot of scar tissue there, and obviously it happened a long time ago, right? So we're going to write it down as we see it, probably CSA child sexual abuse. And I was like, well, and she's like, you could press charges and all that, right? And I said, I could, and I guess I could, but the person who did that to me committed suicide, like 2 years ago or 3 years ago or whatever. So, this is the thing, right? These little points of my life, I had to deal with this stuff. And it was incredibly difficult. Incredibly hard. And so not only the stuff from my parents, but the stuff from being abused sexually by my brother, took a toll on my life. It really did. Took a toll on my body, took a toll on my life. And I thought, I deserve to heal from this. I deserve to heal. I deserve to have a good life. I deserve to have love in my life. I deserve to have not anger, not hatred, not rage, not self-hatred, self-rage, that's eating me up and tearing me up. Like, I deserve to have love in my life. And I need to learn how to love myself, right? And I started to work on it. It's like, and it's hard, like I said, and I was able to do a lot of it on my own. Some of it I had to have help. And, if you can't do this work on your own, then, you have to know whether or not you can do this stuff on your own before you start a program like that, because you need to know that you're not going to hurt yourself or hurt somebody else, because it brings back this horrible stuff, right? And so you have to be careful what you're doing, right? So that's my poem that I wrote for myself there. But I wrote a lot of poems for myself, and mostly that's what those are, was going back and getting in touch with myself. And some of it's just poems that I wrote because I was just pissed off at my mother or whatever, and I thought, you know what, I'm just gonna and it would just flow. Like, I didn't have to sit there and think about the wording. This stuff would just come out, right? And I'm like, this is so great. It was so cathartic, and it really was so healing to be able to get this stuff out. But it's hard to read, and like I'm saying, my books are hard to read. But truth is truth. Truth is everything. And I needed to get this stuff out, right? I have a lot of poems there, so you can check them out if you want to. But that one is very special to me because that's where I went and saved myself off the bed. And, she was still there, tied up and bound and gagged and, wounded. So incredibly wounded. And it's like, most recently, just a little while, I don't know, maybe a week ago, I went and did another meditation. I went in and I talked to the one that's there, and she's a 10-year-old who used to rage and throw knives across the room at pictures of my parents and land the knives right in the middle of their foreheads. She said, no, there's nobody else here. It's just me. And I spent time with her. I spent about an hour with her, and we talked, and she's actually doing really well. And I've never seen her like that before. That little part of myself. I've never seen that little part of myself actually not crying and laying on the floor, devastated, right? And angry and pissed off, right? I haven't seen her any other way except for this last time when I went in. And she wasn't crying. She wasn't violent. She wasn't upset. That's me, right? She was pretty well healed, right? Which tells me that I pretty well have integrated my pain in my past. All those little wounded parts of myself are now healed within myself, right? And that's a wonderful feeling. It really is. Because I'm sitting here today a whole person. And, coming through the fire, coming through the pain, coming through the torture, and also my own self-injury and my own sabotage then as later on in life. And I'm sitting here today and I'm like, wow, You know, what a ride. It really was. First, my parents tried to kill me, and then I tried to kill me. You know, it's like, it's like this is a bad ride, right? It's like, but you know what? It ends well. And that's really what I want for you, right? If you're listening to this and you're struggling and you're having a hard time, I'd like for that to be your story, that it ends really well, that you kick some ass, that you do learn how to do life on your own and love yourself and take care of yourself. Take care of people around you if you can, right? You know, and enjoy life, right? And enjoy yourself. Learn to love yourself and enjoy who you are and sharing your gifts. And, at the end of the day, laying down, you put your head down somewhere on a pillow somewhere. And you can rest. And you can, because you can rest comfortably within yourself. You're like, well, you know what? If this was the last day I had on the earth, it was good. It was good. Right? No regrets, no discontent. It's a good place to be, right? Things obviously don't work out all the time the way we want them to. And most of the time they never do. It's learning how to, to sail through those storms, right? You are going to get wet, you may fall overboard, but you just got to keep going, right? And because the wind direction can change. And, we need to be open, right, to change. We need to be open to moving through this life, right? Allowing ourselves, like when those storms do come, we need to, have safety mechanisms that we can latch onto, coping skills, people in our life that are stable, that can help us, right? People who around us who are good to us, who are going to help us to get through those storms, right? Because this life is tough, right? We do need help. We do need to be able to reach out and get some help, right? So thanks everybody for being here with me today. I really appreciate it, and I hope that you have a good week. Don't be bummed out. Like I'm telling you, if my stuff's depressing, almost all of my stuff is like this. Even my biblical stuff is very deep, because I'm not into small talk, really. Not really. It has to be deeper. I'm not into it because I've just been through too much. That's why I don't do nails and coffee and stuff like that with the girls, because I'm not capable of doing that. Like my mind can't go there. I don't do nails and coffee and talk about silly stuff like that. Like I'm into the really deep shit in life, stuff that really matters, right? So I don't spend my time on that other stuff. But I'm not going to go have a bad day today, I'm not, like I say on all my stuff, it's okay to look at this stuff. And this was part of my healing journey. Like I, for years, would do my healing journey in pieces. Like I'd have to work, right? I was a highly functioning abuse survivor. So I would do, I'd go to work and do what I had to do for the day. And then I would come home and work on this stuff. And, write my books and write my poetry and whatever I was doing. Getting in touch with this stuff, doing my broadcasts and stuff like that. And then work and then do other fun stuff too and hang out with my husband. It's not like I was able to compartmentalize this stuff, and it's a little bit easier maybe for people that can do that. But if you can't do that and you can't cope, then you need to call a crisis line. You need to, get help. Like if you're not coping well and you think you may injure yourself or hurt somebody else, you have to do the right thing and you have to get help, right? And you have to stick it out. Like don't let your past win this fight. Don't let your trauma win this fight. Whatever you've been through. If you're an abuse survivor, do not let your abusers win this fight. You stick it out and you win this fight. My whole thing was like, every day that I wake up and I'm doing life and I'm actually loving myself, caring about myself, and loving other people, every day that I do that is a slap in my abusers' faces. Every single day. Because they couldn't kill me, man. And they couldn't get me to kill myself, right? So this is my main message, man. You stick it out, you get some help. And, you take care of yourself and you learn how to love yourself. You learn how to take care of yourself, right? If you didn't learn that as a child, I had to learn all of it. I'm still working on it. As far as taking care of myself, I still have a little bit of trouble with that. But I do try, and that's the thing. I make the attempt to do the right thing by myself all the time, right? And I'm getting off the nicotine. I'm working on that right now. And, that's kind of my only drug that I do, like caffeine and nicotine. So I'm working on getting rid of the nicotine. Cigarette smokes. I can't smoke, so I'm using vapes, right? But because I'm trying to take care of myself, right? Like I'm saying, I was never shown how to take care of myself. I was shown how to destroy myself. I was shown how to kill myself, right? I was shown how to destroy life, right? And so, to destroy everything, really. So it's kind of like, I've had to go back and redo all this stuff. It's like, okay, I can do this. I can take care of myself. I don't do drugs. I can get off the nicotine. I can, get some more rest, get some more exercise. Eating healthy. I do try to eat healthy. Just take care of yourself and do the things that we need to do, right? Like I say, if you can't cope, you call a crisis line. But I hope you have a wonderful day. Have a great week, everybody. Talk to you later.